Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and even good night. Dear participants from all over the world, dear members of this opening panel, dear panelists and speakers, and all who will actively engage in this Congress over the next 3 days. Dear community and all interested in this global event. On behalf of the European Conservation Agriculture Federation and Swiss No-Till, I welcome you to the 8th World Congress on Conservation Agriculture, which is under the theme, The Future of Farming, Profitable and Sustainable Farming with Conservation Agriculture. A special welcome to the speakers in this opening session who accepted to be with us and to contribute with their presence to support the conservation agriculture movement as promising approach towards profitable and sustainable farming. I welcome the Director General of FAO, Qu Dongyu. I welcome also the Commissioner for Agriculture of the European Union, Janusz Wojciechowski. We also have with us EU Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevičius. We welcome Norbert, the Chair of the Committee of Agriculture and Rural Development of the European Parliament. We will also have Christoph Ammann, a member of the government of the Canton Bern. And also live with us, we have Christian Hofer, the Director of the Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture. A warm welcome also to speakers from important development partners from all around the world who are strongly engaged in the promotion of conservation agriculture. To count with Puri from the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, Martien van Nieuwkoop from the World Bank, Kingfeng from the Asian Development Bank, Abdalah Mokssit from the IPCC. We also have Martien Kropff, Director General of CIMMYT, and at least Boote from the Global Farmer Network. Most of you are with us live today. Only a few, due to great time differences and other commitments, sent us their pre-recorded message. Due to the known reasons, unfortunately, we could not come together physically in the nice city of Bern. However, the new technologies allow us to exchange intensively over the next 3 days to make this event equally a memorable one and capable to contribute boosting CA over the world and to create the desire to see each other in the next Congress in 2024. I don't want to spend more of our precious time, and therefore I hand immediately over to Dave Keating, a journalist based in Brussels and correspondent to several international press agencies. He is very much into European politics and also a professional moderator. Dave will guide us through our sessions during this first day of our Congress. A warm welcome to Dave.
Thank you very much, Mr. Basch, and welcome to everybody. As you mentioned, yes, I'm Dave Keating. I'm a journalist based in Brussels, and I'm going to be walking us through today's conversations. We're going to start out with our welcoming addresses in the morning, and then we're going to move on to 4 panels where we're really going to dive into these issues, looking at the specific actors. So we're going to be talking about the private sector, the public sector, civil society, and perhaps most importantly, the farmers on the ground and how they're actually using these methods. Now, this event is going to be simultaneously translated into French, Russian, and Spanish. You can find those translations on the right-hand side of the screen. Also on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll be able to ask your questions to the panelists that we'll have later on in the day, and I'll be reading out those questions to them. So enough from me, let's dive right in. I would like to introduce Mr. Qu Dongyu, who is the Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, for our welcome address and opening remarks.
Thank you. Die Kamera hier, dann mache ich weiter auf der anderen.
Hello, good morning, David, and all the chairs and the friends from EU and from CIMMYT and from World Asian Development Bank and others. I mentioned a few. And I'm so happy to join your Congress. Thanks to the European Conservation Agricultural Federation, the Swiss Non-Till Association, for the opportunity to address this Congress. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations is this specialized agency of intergovernmental, and that leads to international efforts to defeat hunger and malnutrition. The key challenge is to meet the growing demand for food while to reduce the pressure on the natural resources and the ecosystems. Current consumption pattern and existing agro-food systems are hindering efforts to achieve this. We see disturbingly high rates of food loss and waste, air pollution, greenhouse gas emission, and loss of biodiversity and resulting inequality. We urgently need to do things differently, act holistically to transform our agro-food systems. We have to create new solutions and find a smart way to produce more with less inputs. Well, they keep in mind that there are no healthy food without a healthy environment. This is why FAO Strategic Framework endorsed last week by a ministerial conference focus on the transformation to more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and a more sustainable agro-food system for better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. These four betters represent the guiding principle and the innovative business model for how FAO is supporting the achievement of the 2030 agenda. The four betters also reflect the interconnected economic, social, and environmental dimensions of agro-food systems. To produce more with less requires us to be truly innovative and environmentally thoughtful. FAO is supporting its members in achieving this dedicated balance based on each local conditions and priority. This includes conservation agriculture, integrated with other good economic practices, prevent soil erosion and promote biodiversity, biological interactions, and efficient natural resources management. Principles of conservation agriculture that mitigate the climate change include using non-till or less-till practice to sequester more carbon into soils, use the fewer synthetic chemical input, and increase the use of the appropriate tools and modern machines, include adopting the latest digital and precious agricultural technologies. The practice that adapted to the climate change include using the quality seeds, plant super crop varieties suitable to the specific environment, manage soil water nutrients passed by the returning crop residual and the growing cover crops, diversifying cropping systems, and apply the integrated pest management strategies. I should say my personal experience about 12 years ago when I was a local leader in Ningxia. I had a close cooperation with Chinese colleague Professor Li in Chinese Agricultural University, and also CIMMYT, my friend DG of the Kropff Martien, on the less-tiller or non-tiller conservation agriculture. I was a promoter in Northwest China. So about the 7.5 years, and change also intercropping system. You need the water-saving, efficient agricultural system there with modern technology, with fertigation, irrigation systems, and so on. And also how to get the more efficient use or application of the fertilizer on the ground. At some time, you can create a sustainability in the soil structure and soil quality. So I'm really appreciative what you have done during past 12 years, how to promote conservation agriculture. Of course, it depends on each location, so you have different solutions. So FAO promotes the creation of design of farming employment opportunity, as well as reducing food loss and waste. To do so, it facilitates improved planning between the urban, peri-urban, and the rural areas. We are fully aware of the need to engage more closely with the private sector to leverage innovation and technology advances. We recognize the complementary partnership between the thriving private sectors and the public regulatory framework. And we support the policy strategies that can create enabling environments at national, regional, and global levels. Our new strategy for private sector engagement reflects that modern approach. We need more environment to let the PPP, public-private partnership, to be really happen on the ground, on the field. FAO also recognize the need for digital applications and the promotion of technologies. Advanced data systems, for instance, can inform management decisions for cropping systems in line with the current climate changes and conditions. FAO flagship hand-in-hand initiative accelerate agricultural transformation and sustainable rural development to eradicate poverty, SDG 1, and end hunger and all forms of malnutrition, SDG 2. In doing so, the evidence-based country-led, country-owned initiative contributes to attaining all the sustainable development goals. To initiate prioritized countries where the national capacities and international support are the most limited, or where the operational challenges, including natural or man-made crises, are the greatest. It uses a range of metrics to support agricultural interventions supported by the geospatial platform for aggregating big data. Dear colleagues, to conclude, I would like to underscore that the collective action by all and all tools in the box is essential. If we are to transform our agri-food systems globally, we have 194 members of FAO. FAO is committed to engaging with all stakeholders, deliver meaningful and impactful solutions for farmers. Let us work together to attain the transformation of agri-food systems and achieve the SDGs. I wish you all a successful Congress with a package of balanced solutions. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So I think that's a great and inspiring start to our day of conversations. So we're now going to have welcome addresses from both the European Commission and the Swiss government. So I would next like to introduce Janusz Wojciechowski, who is the EU Commissioner for Agriculture. Mr. Wojciechowski.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the conference. It's my pleasure to address all of you at the 8th World Congress Conservation Agriculture. As you know, one of the political priorities for the European Commission, led by Madam President von der Leyen, is European Green Deal, very ambitious project to achieve climate neutrality in 2050. And at the heart of European Green Deal is Farm-to-Fork strategy. Its core objective is to make food system fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly, and to reform the food systems in a sustainable way. The aim of this sustainable transition is to effectively address the interdependent environmental, social, and climate challenges in an integrated manner. This approach takes into account the interrelations between our health, ecosystems, supply chains, consumption patterns, and planetary boundaries. In order to ensure sustainable food production, farmers need to adapt their production methods. Solution to many of these challenges lie in using smarter, more precise and sustainable farming methods, which draw strongly on knowledge, research and innovation, and use of digital and space technologies. At the same time, farmers' role need to be recognized and be properly rewarded for their work resulting in higher environmental and climate benefits, such as managing and storing carbon in the soil, reducing soil and water pollution with improved nutrient management, protecting and enhancing nature, and reversing ecosystem degradation. Healthy soils are essentials in reaching goals on food security, climate change, biodiversity, and land degradation. The Farm to Fork strategy aims to expand the use of sustainable soil and land management practices that enhance soil health, including but not limited to the principles of conservation agriculture, as well as other approaches such as precision agriculture, agroecology, organic farming, or agroforestry. Organic farming uses various practices which are also used in conservation agriculture. It contributes to the protection of the environment and climate, the long-term fertility of the soils, a high level of biodiversity and non-toxic environment, and high animal welfare standards. Its contribution to farmers' income is not negligible either. As a part of the Farm to Fork strategy, we have set an ambitious target to increase the European Union agricultural land under organic farming from the current 8% to the 25% by 2030. The climate neutrality objective creates a specific purpose for the land-based sectors, since any remaining net emissions from the economic sector should be balanced out with net removals from the land use change, and forestry sectors. Increasing the soil organic carbon pool in agricultural soils, but implementing sustainable soil management practices will enable us to use the full potential of agricultural soils for mitigation and adaptation.
Okay.
Conservation agriculture can play an important role in these practices.
Thank you very much.
Carbon sequestration through various types of carbon farming approaches can offer a new green business model for farmers. It can provide a new source of income, help other sectors to decarbonize, and yield multiple other co-benefits such as enhanced biodiversity and ecosystem services. The European Union Common Agricultural Policy and other European Union funding programs like the LIFE can support the implementation of carbon farming schemes. Carbon farming schemes can also be promoted by the growing voluntary carbon markets, selling carbon credits and certificates, or by the supply and value chains like the food processing and retailing sector, seeking to reduce the climate footprint of their value chain. The Common Agricultural Policy is our central instrument to promote the use of sustainable farming practices, as well as to support farm income, because viable farms are a prerequisite to make Europe's food system fit for the future. The new Common Agricultural Policy will focus on 9 specific objectives. Free economics, fair income for farmers, first of all, free environmental, reduce emissions, restore biodiversity, and free social, vital rural areas, sustainable food. And the new CAP strategy plans will be the key instrument of the member states in addressing the green transition and promoting the use of sustainable practices on farms. In their future CAP strategic plans, member states will outline the details of intervention designed specifically for their farmers based on local conditions and needs. This intervention will support farm income and also reward farmers for the implementation of sustainable practices related to climate change, environment, biodiversity, plant protection, animal welfare, and antimicrobial resistance. Member states, when designing their CAP strategic plans, will have the opportunity to consider practices used by conservation agriculture and to promote it larger scale depending on the regional agronomic aspects and soil composition. Exchange of knowledge, farm advisory services, research, innovation and cooperation are key enablers to make food systems more sustainable, resilient, inclusive and healthy. Under the European Innovation Partnership on Agriculture Sustainability and Productivity, we are encouraging farmers and foresters to work together with researchers, advisors, businesses and others to co-create and test innovative solutions ready to be implemented on the ground. Several such operational groups set up under the EIP Agri have worked in the development of local solutions for the adoption of conservation agriculture. European Union funded research and innovation are also contributing to an increased understanding of the benefits of conservation agriculture, in particular its potential to improve soil health and carbon sequestration. This includes supporting sustainable farm management to reduce threats to soil under climate change for the optimal use of subsidiary crops under conservation agriculture. Summarizing, we are all responsible for creating our sustainable future. I am convinced that using conservation agriculture methods will bring us closer to our sustainability goals. With this idea, conviction in mind, I wish you a good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Wojciechowski. Now let's turn to the EU's Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries. We have a video address from Virginijus Sinkevičius.
A very good morning to all participants, and many thanks for this invitation. You have asked me to say words about how the Commission supports sustainable agriculture, especially in the context of the European Green Deal. Every society is built on farming and food. The Green Deal reflects that. It's a broad quest for sustainability in all the areas that matter, and that includes
Norbert
and conservation
we'll maybe come back to that video. So let's go to Mr. Norbert Lins, who is chair of the Agriculture and Rural Development Committee in the European
and sustainable. Not just here in Europe, but all around the globe. Everywhere we look, we see existential threats. We see climate change and environmental degradation. Soils are increasingly degraded. Wilderness is constantly being destroyed, and wildlife populations are in decline. The loss of biodiversity is especially severe in agricultural areas. Almost all species and habitats related to agriculture are affected, from plants and wildflowers to pollinating insects and farmland birds. Scientists say that if we fail to tackle this crisis, farmers will be the first to suffer. There will be more soil degradation, more water scarcity, even fewer pollinators and less natural pest control. We can and must revert this trend. If we do restore ecosystems and their services, farmers will be the first to benefit, and those benefits will continue for future generations. So it's time to fix our broken relationship with nature. Conservation agriculture, by keeping soil intact as a living ecosystem, tackles problems where they arise. It recognizes soil as a multifunctional living system, vital for the environment and for society. Soils are home to 1/4 of the world's biodiversity, and they provide many services that are essential to our survival. They safeguard the food supply, regulate the climate and the water cycle, and help with pest control. So if we want to tackle the crisis in our biodiversity and our climate, we have to start with soil. In the European Union, our top political priority is the implementing of the European Green Deal. Together with the Recovery and Resilience Facility, it brings decisive action, building sustainability into EU economy. Last year, we adopted 2 major elements: the new EU strategy for biodiversity and Farm to Fork, our strategy for sustainable food. They both set targets that are ambitious but achievable, enabling our society to live within the boundaries of the planet. Farm to Fork aims for long-term food security, transforming the way we produce, process, market and consume. The biodiversity strategy takes an integrated approach to nature with measures for all the pressures it faces. It includes a plan to restore rivers and degraded ecosystems back to health. It promotes biodiversity-friendly farming practices and increase landscape diversity, bringing back at least 10% of landscape features on agricultural land. Both strategies share common targets to be achieved by 2030. They include a 50% reduction in the use and risk of pesticide, which is very relevant for conservation agriculture. They also propose action to reduce nutrient losses by at least 50% and action to maintain soil fertility. And we will increase the share of agricultural land under organic farming by up to 25%. Most of the Green Deal elements have now been adopted, but there are two more major items on the way. The first is a new strategy for soil to improve fertility, protect soil biodiversity, and comprehensively increase soil organic matter. It will provide a framework for renewed policy action on protection, strengthening existing measures and reducing threats. A new strategy for forests is also on the way. It will aim for sustainable management, protecting ecosystems and their biodiversity, and strengthening resilience in the face of climate change. The global challenges are huge, but it's not too late to meet them. It will take substantial change, with farmers at the heart of the process. Our aim at the European Commission is to keep farmers on board and help them through this process of transition. Our common European agriculture policy will continue to support them, securing funding for sustainable measures. That way we maintain current levels of productivity in a sector that thrives. We all understand how our economy depends on healthy natural capital. And as we move through the transition, we'll need more nature-based solutions and more approaches that are close to nature. Climate change is already here. Around the globe, biodiversity is in steep decline, and the nature urgently needs protection. This situation has to change. We need practicable solutions for sustainable agriculture. We will deliver those solutions by working closely with the people involved, farmers and landowners, land planners, industry executives, mayors and ministers. With more collaboration at local, regional, national and global levels, promoting and implementing sustainable land management. That way we deliver what Europe needs: sustainable agriculture for the longer term, while supporting all three pillars of sustainability: the ecological, the economic and the social. That's the promise of the European Union, and it's how we will deliver the European Green Deal. All the best for your conference. I wish you fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my apologies, we did have the video for Mr. Sinkevičius. So now I can introduce Mr. Norbert Linz, who is chair of the Agriculture and Rural Development Committee in the European Parliament. Mr. Linz?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning to all of you, dear Director General, Mr. Dongyu, dear commissioners, dear President Basch, dear Mr. Ammann and Mr. Hofer. Thank you for hosting this World Congress on Conservation Agriculture and giving me this excellent opportunity to share some reflections on food systems, innovation and natural attractive are of our interest and constitute a scope of direct and indirect discussions during the Agri Committee meetings. The COVID-19 crisis has significantly affected many sectors and economies. The EU agriculture has also suffered significantly. The pandemic has also revealed the weaknesses of our food systems and have the most vulnerable among us. Moreover, unfortunately, there are still many unknowns about the scale of the impact of the pandemic on the economy. It is clear that for the future crisis, we have to do the utmost to be prepared. And I'm sure that conservation agriculture has an important role there. Not only for the future crisis, but especially to our changing climate. The way we produce and consume food has a direct influence on our climate and environment. And agriculture is the sector most affected by climate change. But luckily, agriculture is also the sector who can store carbon and become climate neutral by possibly 2035 in the European Union if supported by the right tools. I'm happy that today we can and need to take stock of the issues observed and use them as an opportunity to identify what and where we have to be better. In consequence, there is a need for a transition to more robust food systems, using innovative techniques with more sustainable use of natural resources and where no one is left behind. To accomplish it, we need all actors across value chain, not only in the EU, but also globally. However, for a proposed transition, we must not forget to support our farmers. I would like to underline that they play a crucial role in ensuring our food security, producing healthy and nutritious food for our citizens. Therefore, they contribute to the well-being of the people in Europe and all over the world. However, they are also the most affected by any changes, despite the difficulties they face. Honorable speakers, we are aware of present risks in agriculture. Among other things, risks related to water scarcity, land degradation, losses of biodiversity. Unfortunately, I could continue listing risks that European farmers face in their daily life. Therefore, we should be conscious of the urgent need for action to mitigate those risks in order to preserve and restore healthy ecosystems. Protecting these fragile and non-renewable resources is crucial to ensuring a healthy future, our future. The European Green Deal pursues wide-ranging actions to make Europe climate neutral by 2050. It introduces new, sustainable and inclusive strategies to accelerate the economic transition that will allow for the improvement of the quality of life, of health, the care of nature, and leave no one behind. With its flagship strategy, the Farm to Fork addresses the challenges of sustainable food systems and recognizes the links between healthy people, healthy society, and a healthy planet. The biodiversity strategy aims at reversing biodiversity loss and accelerating the EU's transition towards a resource-efficient and green economy. These two strategies have the same denominator, change. They both recognize that the change of current way of life is crucial and we have to act now. We all know that with increasing digitization and precision techniques, we can protect our environment by decreasing the use of fertilizers and pesticides without negatively impacts on yields. It should never be a question of either or, and rather how do we protect our environment and climate, guaranteeing food security and production in Europe. Moreover, the recent European Commission study has confirmed that the products of the new genomic techniques have the potential to contribute to more sustainable agri-food system. The goal of the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork are ambitious, and new genome techniques will help achieving them. I hope that Europe will be more courageous when it comes to innovation and thereby not only support our farmers, but also our excellent scientists that developed the technologies and its benefits. Therefore, I will dare to say that harnessing innovation and sustainability of food systems contributes to making our economy more competitive. Ladies and gentlemen, the place to engage in the discussion on this matter is the Food System Summit that will take place in September 2021. This event is meant to seek ambitious policy outcomes for the future of farming and the global fight against hunger. It is an excellent opportunity to launch new actions toward transformations of the world food systems into healthier and more sustainable. The EU has actively contributed to the preparation of the 2030 agenda and has committed itself to make the Sustainable Development Goals a guiding principle in all its policies and to promote them with its partners. As Agri and Devi Committee in the European Parliament, we jointly asked the Commission to put forward a renewed and enhanced EU commitment to achieve zero hunger and the right to adequate food. Furthermore, we need adequate financial commitments in order to reach the SDG 2, zero hunger, given the current huge global funding gap. We also need to think of a new trade policy to support the global transition to sustainable agri-food systems, and also how, as EU, we can support partner countries and their local farmers, fishers and foresters, as well as food producers in moving towards a more sustainable practices in key areas such as animal welfare, the use of pesticides, and the fight against antimicrobial resistance. This is the change for the EU to share its global vision and commitments with the world. I'm confident that by working together with the stakeholders across all domains, we can move towards the transition of the EU food systems to be more resilient, more sustainable, taking into account innovation and protection of biodiversity and natural resources. And let us, among all questions, not forget that our farmers are in the middle of it all and produce daily our food on the table. I want to take this opportunity and thank them for their work. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a good conference with constructive discussions and innovative ideas. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Linz. Now let's move from Brussels to Bern. We next have a video address from Christoph Ammann, who is a member of the government of the Canton of Bern and a Minister for Economic Affairs, Energy and the Environment.
Welcome to the Canton of Bern. Bienvenue dans le Canton de Bern. Herzlich willkommen im Kanton Bern, meine Damen und Herren, Mesdames et Messieurs, Ladies and Gentlemen. How can we produce our food more sustainably? This question is extremely complex and unfortunately there are no simple solutions. You know it better than me. I am pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to be speaking to you today, to people who accept this challenge. Welcome to the 8th World Congress of Conservation Agriculture here in the Canton of Bern. I am proud that the Canton of Bern, with its experts from the administration, teaching and research, can contribute to the strengthening and dissemination of a soil conservation cropping system. Switzerland and Bern region in particular is predestined to host the World Congress, even if not all participants were able to travel due to the corona pandemic. The Canton of Bern, with its diverse landscapes and different sizes and types of farms within a very small area, offers the best opportunities for conservation agriculture. Switzerland, and in particular the Canton of Bern, has been researching and testing soil conservation farming systems for many years. Today, 5% of the arable land is cultivated with direct seeding. Efforts are also being made to introduce a soil conservation cropping system in organic farming and vegetable growing. In Switzerland, 2 of the basic principles of conservation agriculture, permanent soil cover and diverse crop rotation, have been legally prescribed since 1997. In the Canton of Bern, many methods have been tested and soil-friendly cropping systems have been promoted with financial incentives since 1993. Bernese agriculture has done pioneering work in this area. The online World Congress 2021 in Switzerland is intended to highlight the importance of soil protection. The public and political decision makers should be made aware of this issue. I am sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you will succeed in this endeavor. Thank you very much. As Minister of Economic Affairs, responsible also for agriculture, I am committed to ensuring that the Canton of Bern continues to move ahead in this area. The Canton of Bern will continue to work hard to find solutions for sustainable agricultures. I would like to thank all those who contribute to this effort. I thank all those who build networks to exchange knowledge, share their results, and support each other. I thank all those who have made this World Congress possible. A big thank to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you now all a successful World Congress. Thank you very much for your attention.
So now we move from the canton level to the federal level. I'd next like to introduce Mr. Christian Hofer, Director of the Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture.
Dear participants of the Conservation Agricultural Congress, dear organizers. Also from my side, a warmly welcome to you to this outstanding event, and many thanks for giving me the opportunity to address a few words to you. When you think of Switzerland, you probably imagine snow-covered mountains, lush meadows and clear lakes. As diverse as our landscape is, so is our agriculture. Swiss farmers cultivate soils from the flat central plateau on 300 meters above sea level to steep mountain slopes up to 2,500 meters above sea level. They produce crops, fruits and vegetables on about 400,000 hectares and use pastures either year-round on about 600,000 hectares, or only in the summer months on more than 460,000 hectares. Swiss agriculture is almost completely soil-based. We have the advantage that we can produce our agricultural goods on young and very fertile soils. Therefore, we have to take a special care on this precious resource. The sustainable use of soils is even stipulated within the Swiss Constitution. Already back in 1996, the Swiss population voted with almost 80% in favor of an initiative calling for a multifunctional agriculture. Therefore, Swiss farmers fulfill nowadays far more tasks than slowly producing food, as they are on also sheep herds of our landscapes and our cultural heritage. Within our multifunctional agriculture, farmers ensure the maintenance of many services for our society and are well aware of their responsibility. More than in almost any other country, farmers are constantly under the scrutiny of the society and try to make people aware of diverse demands on agriculture they have daily to deal with, and to create understanding for their practices. With only 4 acres of arable land available per inhabitant, the pressure on the most fertile soils is tense. Around 1 square meter of arable land is lost every second in favor for settlements, infrastructure and forestation. In order to preserve the most fertile soils for agricultural cultivation, Switzerland developed a special development program almost 30 years ago, which was renewed just last year. In this manner, each canton is obliged by law to protect a certain area of highly fertile cropland, based on its size and natural and climatic conditions. To ensure that also future generations can also utilize soils according to their needs, the Federal Office for Agriculture developed, together with the Federal Office for Environment and for spatial development, a national soil strategy. This strategy pursues the vision that soil functions shall be conserved permanently and cultivated sustainably. To this end, various goals and paths have been defined that should lead to the preservation of the manifold soil functions. For the agricultural sector, the aims are, among others, the prevention of soil compaction and erosion, and the preservation of soil organic matter and soil biodiversity. As you can see, these are almost the same aims we are in the focus of conservation agriculture. However, knowledge about Switzerland's soil is still rather poor and very patchy. Therefore, the Federal Council created a Center of Excellence for Soil. This center functions a national hub for soil information and provides all kinds of soil-related services to as many user groups as possible. Detailed information on the state of soils and the functions they provide is highly needed on many different levels, from the political decisions makers to our farmers who are working daily on their soils. The conditions for Swiss farmers are quite different from the conditions for many other farmers in other countries. As Switzerland consists mainly on small-scaled landscapes, and many fields are on rather steep slopes, cultivating in the fields is labor-intensive. For these difficult production conditions, the high societal demands on production systems, and the difficult economic environment for agriculture, Switzerland is not exactly known to be the cheap country. Swiss farmers are supported by the government with direct payments. These direct payments are rewarded to farmers for their achievements in preserving the cultural landscapes, food production, and the responsible use of natural resources. In order to receive these payments, a number of conditions must be fulfilled, including an appropriate soil protection. This obligates farmers to take care of their soils, to maintain a balanced nutrition regime, and to plant a broad crop rotation. Additionally to these mandatory requirements, financial support programs are in place since 2014, which promote the application of soil-conserving practices like no-till, strip tillage, and mulch tillage. In addressing the conflict of interests between reduced soil tillage and broad use of herbicides, the financial support is linked to the condition that a certain application rate of herbicides cannot be exceeded. Meanwhile, almost 20% of all Swiss farms participate in this soil-conserving program. Such programs for the sustainable use of agricultural soils are even planned to be extended in future agriculture policies. Additional reward programs will be set up that will stimulate not only reduced soil tillage, but also a maximal duration of soil cover and evenly balanced humus management on the farm level. Together with the already mandatory broad crop rotation, Swiss farmers will thereby be almost completely rewarded for the application of conservation agricultural practices. You see, the sustainable use of soils is not only the center of farms' daily work, but also in the focus of many decision takers, and the resource soil with all its providing functions should be even much more appreciated in the future as it was so far. For this, we need our dedicated work on practices preserving our soils more than ever before, and I hope that we all can learn a lot by the outcomes of this conference. I wish you all very inspiring talks and fruitful discussions, and this not only for the duration of this Congress, but also for your ongoing work. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hofer, coming to us from Bern. I think when I've been in Switzerland and I've seen those fields on the slopes, I think to myself, wow, that looks like a lot of work. So for sure, it is a labor-intensive endeavor. So that wraps up our round of welcoming addresses from our political leaders. We're now going to go to our development partners for some welcoming addresses. So we will start with a video from Martien van Nieuwkoop, who from the World Bank. Martien?
Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to provide opening remarks for the 8th World Congress on Conservation Agriculture today. The conversations that we'll be having at this gathering come at a very critical time. Climate change and food security are pressing concerns. Now more than ever, the world's most vulnerable people are counting on the food system and its stakeholders to come up with sustainable solutions to feed the world without further damaging the planet. We are here today to talk about conservation agriculture. Why is this important? By 2050, the world needs to feed 2 billion more people. At the same time, there's growing pressure on the food system caused by climate change. To make things even more challenging, greenhouse gas emissions from the agriculture sector need to decline by 67% by 2050 to restrict the global temperature rise to only 2 degrees centigrade. Clearly, we need to transform our food system to meet these growing demands for food, resilience to climate change, and the need to contribute to climate change mitigation. We will have to work collectively with the world's 700 million plus small-scale farmers to transform the way food is produced, distributed, and consumed to drive change. Investments in conservation agriculture and all the climate-smart agriculture practices are key to ensuring that the global food system contributes to healthy people, healthy planet, and healthy economies. To improve agriculture productivity, raise incomes for farmers, conserve natural resources, improve climate adaptation, and contribute to mitigation, conservation agriculture techniques need to be scaled up. The World Bank is partnering with countries, organizations, and all the stakeholders to transform the food system. Our commitment to climate action is evident in our corporate climate commitments. All our agriculture projects are screened for climate and disaster risks and carry out greenhouse gas accounting. Our climate-smart agriculture portfolio is growing. Since the Paris Agreement in 2015, the climate co-benefits of our investments have doubled from 28% to 56%. And in April this year, the World Bank President David Malpass announced our new climate change action plan, which raises our ambition on climate action. This action plan supports transformative investments in systems that contribute the most to emissions and have the greatest climate vulnerabilities. The agriculture and food system is one of those systems. We look forward to continuing to partner with stakeholders to transform the food system so that it is more productive and resilient and helps mitigate climate change. We are focused on high-impact areas such as rice cultivation, sustainable livestock systems, agroforestry, integrated landscape management and restoration, and soil health. Conservation agriculture has been an important part of our support for developing countries, and we have learned a lot from our knowledge work, partnerships, and investments. Our Climate Smart Agriculture Country Profile series, developed in partnership with the CGIAR, shows us that conservation agriculture is among the top 5 technology clusters that are the most common across the globe, and which also happen to have the highest climate smartness. Generally, these technologies coincide with common sense agriculture. Income and profit are a major driver for adoption of technologies by farmers. It is important that conservation agriculture has clear yield and economic benefits, for farmers. In China, for instance, where the World Bank has partnered with the government to support close to $1 billion worth of investments in climate smart and sustainable agriculture, conservation agriculture has been piloted with crop straw mulching, reduced tillage, new crop rotation patterns, and more rational use of fertilizers. Farmers participating in some pilots were able to increase their average crop yield by 6% and their income by 12% on average, while investing in healthier soil and reduced pollution. We also learned that technology uptake depends on context and can vary between different production systems and locations. To encourage adaptation, interventions need to be tailored to specific locations considering biophysical and socioeconomic conditions. Clearly, there should be some flexibility on the conservation agriculture mix, but at the same time, core principles of minimum soil disturbance, permanent soil cover, and crop rotation and intercropping should be maintained. Rather than focus on singular interventions, integrated packages of technologies can help improve adoption. Furthermore, a broad value chain approach will boost farmer profits and create incentives for the adoption of conservation agriculture. We have also learned that scaling of conservation agriculture requires the right public choices and policies. We are working with clients to repurpose public agriculture support programs so that they provide incentives to farmers to invest in climate smart agriculture. From the public sector alone, we have the potential to leverage over $600 billion worth of financing towards climate smart agriculture and conservation agriculture. By repurposing subsidies towards technologies that help farmers defray costs and become more efficient, we can encourage the adoption and the scaling up of conservation agriculture. For instance, investment in appropriate technologies such as labor-saving machinery like no-till planters can go a long way to drive uptake. Of course, the private sector will be a critical partner in transforming the food system and scaling up conservation agriculture. The private sector can support conservation agriculture in many ways, including developing appropriate and innovative technologies, such as labor-saving machinery. Already, AgResults, an over $150 million multilateral initiative led by the World Bank, has demonstrated the potential for pay-for-results price competitions to incentivize the private sector to overcome barriers to investing in innovative solutions that improve the lives of smallholder farmers. We also need to invest in the delivery of innovation at scale. Conservation agriculture needs to be deployed faster, at a larger scale, and at reduced cost in order to have greater impact where it is needed the most. The bank has just approved a new $60 million project accelerating the impact of CJR Climate Research for Africa project. It aims to close the gap between upstream research partners and downstream development and delivery partners. This program will help African countries strengthen the resilience of their agricultural sectors to the threat posed by climate change. This can be an important vehicle for driving conservation agriculture adoption at scale. Scaling up conservation agriculture will require a joint and sustained effort from many stakeholders, including all of us who are here today. And this Congress is a good opportunity to explore solutions, share lessons, and advance this transformative agenda. I look forward to the sessions and wish everyone a productive, successful Congress. Thank you.
Great. So that's the view from the World Bank. Let's turn next to Joe Puri, who is Director of the Division of Environment, Climate, Nutrition, Gender, Youth, and Social Inclusion at the International Fund for Agricultural Development.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure for me to be here on behalf of the President of IFAD and to greet all of you to this what I hope will be a very successful and illuminating event. So my comments today on behalf of IFAD will speak really about the potential of conservation agriculture and really what the potential is of agencies such as IFAD, but also the rest of the international organizational system to support conservation agriculture. Now, we know from the literature that by land area, 87% of conservation agriculture that has really been researched is concentrated in just 5 countries. Most of them are present in the developed world, and these constitute the agro-ecozones in which conservation agriculture is most intensively researched. Outside of these areas, the potential environmental and economic benefits of conservation agriculture adoption, however, have remained controversial and somewhat uncertain. And this is primarily because research in these regions has been lacking, and the existing literature has really come up with surprising gaps and limitations in terms of scope, data collection, and study designs. Some of the key limitations include the length of studies, the lack of metadata on variables such as wealth and soil health, and the lack of attention given to social context, including gender dimensions. Compared to men and due largely to gendered barriers, including lack of access to land, machinery, inputs, extension services, and credit services, women farmers adopted conservation agriculture much less and disadopted it far more. Women's productive farmland is also frequently susceptible to dispossession. However, what we have found is that deliberately enlisting women as beneficiaries, working with men to advance their understanding of women's needs in agriculture, and offering agricultural inputs directly to women are some strategies that have enhanced women's participation in conservation agriculture. International agencies, ladies and gentlemen, can be instrumental as catalysts and instigators towards an effort to adopt and sustain conservation agriculture. This can include increased donor funding that is strategically used and that can make a vital contribution, especially in the startup phase, which is when conservation agriculture tends to be far more ephemeral. IFAD's own target groups are vulnerable smallholder farmers all across the world. But these are also groups that are the hardest to reach with respect to conservation agriculture. In areas and investments that IFAD has made, IFAD has a lot of experience in conservation agriculture, but also specifically in geographies such as sub-Saharan Africa. In 2016, we published a note, a how-to-do note on conservation agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa. And a key takeaway from that work, but also subsequent work, is that there is no simple blueprint. Systems thinking is really the best way forward, which essentially means that careful, sensitive, and informed design is required in order to accommodate various needs. Entry points for conservation agriculture should really be targeted at main constraints that are encountered while practicing conservation agriculture. We also find that resource constraints of farmers, which also include access to markets, but also labor, must be addressed to promote uptake of conservation agriculture, as these packages themselves seldom address the needs and constraints, especially of small-scale producers. In one of IFAD's investments in conservation agriculture in Ghana, which is the Agriculture Sector Investment Program, or GASIP, we used a framed field experiment, right, to simulate choices over different seasons and provide initial evidence regarding the effectiveness of strategies to increase adoption, and found three interesting things. First, not surprisingly, incentives are effective. However, in the adoption of conservation agriculture. However, the study did design the incentives over several periods, so it's not clear as to how a one-time incentive like a hand seeder or a wheelbarrow might work to maintain adoption. Second, increasing uptake did continue even after incentives had been withdrawn, suggesting that targeting incentives over a fixed period could help farmers overcome the initial costs and uncertainty associated with adoption of conservation agriculture practices. Third, individuals who had received information about conservation agriculture and who were told that a peer farmer had successfully adopted conservation agriculture over a long period were far more likely to adopt conservation agriculture. In this sense, we find that demonstration plots might be effective if they can be maintained for a long enough period of time. The theory of change behind interventions and investments such as these, however, should be modified to suggest the type of long-term information that might be far more relevant than contemporaneous farming outcomes amongst peers. As a next step, we also think that one could envision using a randomized rollout to test the provision of incentives to catalyze conservation agriculture adoption. The idea would be to use lessons from initial communities in the second entry group, which would serve as the control group during the first phase of the program. This type of study would allow research to either confirm or refute the results of investments such as these, while providing risk reduction for the implementing government. Going forward, ladies and gentlemen, well-designed long-term studies on conservation agriculture that feature sound agronomic practices and comprehensive documentation are required, as they are largely missing from the literature. We find that more research on the impacts of social dimensions on uptake and success of conservation agriculture is required and represents a critical gap in operational scientific knowledge on how to successfully promote adoption. Private benefits to farmers and public benefits in terms of carbon sequestration and food system resilience adaptation must be weighed against project costs for designing, testing, and scaling systems approaches to conservation agriculture in local and regional contexts. On gender, available studies are limited in number and robustness, are short-term, and are conducted in very few countries, and use cross-sectional data. They therefore offer very little basis for any reliable conclusions on how gender and conservation agriculture impact each other in regions. IFAD deliberately targets women beneficiaries across its portfolio, including in conservation agriculture activities. For example, in the Kenya Cereal and Climate Resilient Agricultural Livelihoods Project, a large number of beneficiaries were women who achieved increased yields of maize and sorghum. We also find that complementary programs that empower women and other marginalized peoples can be used to help overcome barriers to adoption of conservation agriculture. So, for example, IFAD also employs household methodologies such as gender action learning systems, or GALS, which address gender biases. This may contribute, to mitigating dispossession of productive land. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, a systems approach and context-specific project design should be able to account for all constraints, including those of marginalized groups, and creating more productive and equitable food systems that can help achieve multiple SDGs. In this context, greater research is required also to address technical constraints, such as availability of residues for mulch, which is often used for animal fodder instead, integrating livestock into conservation agriculture packages, that is almost completely absent from the literature, addressing market constraints on crop rotation, especially for alternative crops and non-food crops, and last but not least, addressing resource constraints for scaling up conservation agriculture from small to large plots, such as hand weaving, as well as the use of herbicides and mechanization versus the use of manual labor. Thank you so much, Dave, and back to you.
Thanks a lot. That's really interesting what you were saying about the difference that demonstration plans can make, and that when farmers see a peer farmer using CEA, they're more likely to try it themselves. Let's move on next to Mr. Qingfeng Zhang, who is Chief of Rural Development and Food Security Thematic Group at the Asian Development Bank.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks now for invite Asian Development Bank to join this very, very important event. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers for successfully organizing this very important Congress on conservation agriculture in this very difficult time. The theme of the 2021 Congress, the future of the farming, profitable and sustainable farming with conservation agriculture, resonate with the ADB strategy 2030, and also very much in line with our escalated focus on supporting our developing member country in Asia for their green, inclusive, and also resilient recovery. Asia has made remarkable progress in reducing hunger since the introduction of the Green Revolution in middle 1960s. But despite of the progress, Asia is still home to more than half of the total undernourished people in the world, estimated 380 million people in 2019. Asia is also one of the most agriculturally resource-stressed regions in the world. Agricultural land, water spaces are declining, and the agricultural workforce is shrinking. The two-way nexus between the agriculture and climate change is intensified. Against this background, the conservation agriculture is very, very important in Asia to prevent losses of the arable land and also to regenerate degraded lands at the same time. Recognizing the importance of the conservation agriculture, a number of the DMCs in Asia has made good progress in conservation agriculture. Countries like China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and also the Philippines not only working to transform the agriculture into the sustainable base, but also have the research and the extension activities on conservation agriculture. Among them, China and India have the significant area already under the low-tier crops. Up to the 2016, the conservation agriculture system have been extensively implemented in China to reach an area as much as a million hectare. It was also reported India's conservation agriculture program saved about $164 million with an internal rate of the return of the 66%, which was the highest amongst the CGIAR program. To promote the knowledge sharing on conservation agriculture, regional networks for the conservation agriculture for both the South Asia and also Southeast Asia have been established. These networks aim to identify the basic practices and also they promote the knowledge sharing and also the innovative technologies among these DMCs. Together with these development countries and also our development partners, IDB already assigns the DMCs promoting the conservation agriculture, research and development, knowledge sharing, demonstration, and also the pilot projects. One of the example projects we are working on is the dryland sustainable agriculture in China, which IDB already invested since 2009. This project covers 27 counties in Gansu, Henan, and the Shandong provinces. And after the 6 years, the project has delivered considerable amounts of the output in terms of conservation agricultural techniques, such as returning crop residues to the soil, and also establishing the facility, and also engaging the farmers, showing promise achieving this outcome. The IDB has also started to prepare another project in Indonesia with a focus on dryland farming as well. This project includes the soil and water conservation measures to return and also to increase the soil quality. The project will provide the selected farmers with the soil care test equipment to independently monitor soil quality, analyze the results, and also decide on the action to improve the fertility. In partnership with the International Rice Research Institute, IRI, IDB completed the demonstration of the direct seeding of the rice in 2019 in Nepal and also Cambodia to disseminate the benefit of the minimal and zero tillage to farmers. In Nepal, for example, labor shortage is a major problem in rice production as a primary method of crop establishment is transplanting, which requires a high labor input. The equipment shows direct seeding requiring zero or the minimum tillage to reduce the total cost by 30 to 40%. This generates the interest among the policymakers and also the practitioners in these countries. The similar findings also obtained from fair experiments in Cambodia as well. There are also, this is a sort of some of the examples of the IDB's initiative to promote the conservation agriculture in Asia, where of course we need to do more to promote the conservation agriculture. That is in Asia, which is now dominated by the rice-based system. As I mentioned in the beginning, IDB is committed to green, inclusive, and resilient rural recovery from the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Responsible production with a minimum impact on nature, greening of the agricultural value chain with a minimum carbon footprint, and the conservation of the biodiversity through the natural capital investment are the key priorities for our effort. Finally, scaling up conservation agriculture in the Asia requires more natural climate element and also private sector participation in the region. ADB right now is establishing a working group to expand our experiences in China and also Mekong region through a regional natural capital lab. The lab is designed as a living and a virtual platform to incubate, accelerate, and expand the natural capital investment, which will prioritize the support of a greening of agricultural value chain in developing Asia. The lab also will leverage existing accounting tools to quantify the ecosystem services benefits of green agricultural value chains, strengthen equal compensation or payment for ecological services to incentivize behavior change among small farmers, and also establish the financial facility to convert ecosystem value and assets into the revenue model of agribusiness. The lab will also act as a enabler for blended financing to promote green, inclusive, and resilient solutions to build the sustainable food systems. I will now invite you, one of our partners, to join us on this initiative, which can potentially contribute to conservation agriculture. I'm now conclude again, thanking the organizers for organizing this very important and timely Congress. And same time, I look forward to interactive and useful discussions leading up to the programmatic solutions to promote the conservation agriculture. Thank you again, Deb, and also the all participants for your attention. Thank you. Over to you, Deb.
Thanks very much. So let's hear next from Abdalah Mokssit, Secretary of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Thank you very much, dear moderator. And I want to start by thanking the organizer for this 8th World Congress for Conservation of Agriculture to invite IPCC and for this very, very important topic, which is climate change, land and agriculture, which is close to my heart. I feel privileged to be here with so many other distinguished speakers in this panel. So let me just start by telling you about IPCC. The Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, which was established in 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and United Nations Environment Programme, with the main mandate is to assess scientific knowledge and how to provide this assessment to policymakers. The IPCC produces reports which are some of the most widely reviewed by science experts and used by stakeholders. Over the 33 past years, the IPCC has gone through 5 complete assessment cycles. And in this current cycle, the most intense one, the 6th one, we already provided 3 special reports, which were already approved. The first of these special reports focuses on global warming about 1.5 degrees C, as we are currently at just over 1 degree C of global warming since the year 1950-1900. This report looks at which additional risk this extra half of a degree of warming would mean, and what risks could be avoided compared to higher level of warming. It also explores global responses options to avoid further warming, to ensure a sustainable development and eradicate poverty. The reports on climate, another special report. The reports on climate change and land focuses on land and freshwater ecosystems and food systems and covers desertification, degradation, and agriculture. Those topics are very relevant to your discussion today. The report on the ocean and cryosphere. Cryosphere is the cold, frozen part of the world. This special report focuses on the part of the climate system that react more slowly, like the ocean glaciers, but which have long-term effects. So what do we know about climate change now from this special report? The world's average temperature has warmed by more than 1 degree C over the past 150 years, and so. In the Paris Agreement, the governments of the world agreed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and to keep the rise in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees C compared to pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit increases to 1.5 degrees C. However, current pledges by governments are not enough. Indeed, current climate policies put us on track for around 3 degrees C of global warming by 2100, and even more in the next century. We have evidence that warming is already affecting livelihoods, and ecosystems around the world. Special reports on climate change and land, which is very relevant to your talks, shows that population growth and changes in consumption of food, feed, fiber, timber, and energy have caused unprecedented rates of land and freshwater use. Extreme events have become more frequent and intense. 500 million people live in areas that experience desertification. As the global population increases, so dry lands can be more vulnerable. There are limits to what can be done to restore this land. As soils have eroded, land has become degraded. When land is degraded, it reduces the soil's ability to take up carbon, and this exacerbates climate change. In turn, climate change will exacerbate land degradation in many different ways. Land degradation affects productivity, crops, and releases carbon into the atmosphere. Despite increasing of food production, an estimated 821 million people are undernourished. Climate change will cause yield declines, increased prices, reduced nutrient levels in food, and supply chain disruption. Our special reports are clear. Every bit of warming matters. Every fraction of degree is important. Every year matters. The window of opportunity to limit global warming to levels close to what we have now is closing. Every choice matters. The reports also say that climate action can go hand in hand with poverty eradication and sustainable development. If warming is limited to 1.5 degrees C instead of reaching 2 degrees C or higher, far fewer people and ecosystems will be affected. Limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees C is not impossible, but many countries will need purposeful and ambitious changes in all aspects of society at a speed that has not been experienced before. So, what is our role? Our work spans the full spectrums of disciplines, from physical sciences to the life and to the social sciences. It includes assessment of scientific research in applied areas such as agriculture, health, urbanization, transport, energy, and economics, and many more. We are policy relevant. We lay out options for responses action by our 195 member governments and others, international negotiation and observer organization. Besides providing science-based information for domestic policymakers, IPCC assessment underpin international negotiation on climate change. As I said, we have produced 5 full assessment reports. The first assessment report in 1990 led to the creation for UNFCCC. The 5th assessment report, completed in 2014, provided the scientific input for the climate negotiations in 2015 that led to the Paris Agreement. All our reports are critical input for the negotiation system. We are now working on the 6th assessment cycle, which is the most intense cycle in the history of IPCC. This cycle focuses on solution. It is solution oriented. It will look only on the regional aspect, but also in the role of cities. And for the first time, we'll cover topics such as sustainable production and consumption, which are really connected to this Congress. It will also look at the decision-making options and the role of institution and international cooperation. Difficult circumstances we are all experiencing with the COVID-19 pandemic this time. It's changing, so we are trying, even in this pandemic situation, to provide the best information we can have, and we are really inviting you to visit our website and also our social media network to have the latest updates of information. Currently, we are expecting the working group 1. The working group 1 of IPCC dealing with physical science basis report. This contribution working group 1 will be approved in next August, and enough time before the COP26 in Glasgow. The working group 3 report, which will have a dedicated chapter on agriculture, is expected to be approved next year. So we want to ask you to be patient to wait this information. I want to conclude by IPCC is assisting research. We are not doing research, but we are trying to provide the best information for policymakers, negotiators, but not only those, to all segments of the population. And this is, we have also a very huge, intense outreach program. And also we are trying this time, because it is cycle solution oriented, to provide necessary information for decision maker. And you can just use each report with key messages that we can put in the back of flyer like this. It is exactly the size of a guard visit, and you have in the back all the key messages that one prime minister can use to take a decision. Because we have hundreds of scientists working on assessing research, but the policymaker, the prime minister, the minister need 4 messages, 4 key messages to take decision. And this is what we are producing. It is a paper that can be put in a pocket, and this is like a booklet. And this is how the effort of IPCC communication to simplify the message for policymaker to take decision. Taking in consideration that behind this flyer, which is the size of card visit, one head of state can find the necessary information to reach Paris Agreement and necessary action to provide a good indice to make this climate change something that we can tackle, but not only this, also to make this climate change as climate change. Thank you very much. And I hope for this Congress, excellent outcome. Thank you very much for inviting IPCC for this excellent event. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mokssit. That's certainly very handy to have. So let's move on for our next welcome address to Martien Kropff, who is Director General of the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center. Mr. Kropff?
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Simple check. Yeah, I'm also now the first Global Science Director for one CGIR's Resilient Agri-Food System Science area. We are reforming. We are now really becoming one organization. So, but I will concretely explain some of the concrete examples that we have, because we heard the challenges, everybody knows those. We just heard from the IPCC how important it is also that we have evidence-based, science-based solutions. And that's what we stand for as CGIAR. And I will give some CIMMYT examples because many of our scientists engage in conservation agriculture, not as a belief, but basically as a systems approach to find solutions for sustainability in agriculture. So I'm happy to be here today to shed some light on some of our success stories at scale. I think that's important to hear. Now, the challenges, we all know that if not practiced sustainably, agriculture can have a toll on the environment. And I don't have to say more about it because we heard so many speakers before already explaining this in more detail. So the solution could be, one of the solutions is regenerative and nature-friendly farming methods, such as applied in conservation agriculture, that can help combat those impacts and boost farmers' incomes. Although we have to be careful, we work for the smallholder farmers in developing countries at scale. For example, 60% of the varieties of wheat and maize in developing countries come from CIMMYT. But it's completely different from issues in developed countries, like in Europe, like in the Netherlands, my country where I come from. So the issues are different, so we have to also think differently. So around CA, a conducive decision-making and business environment can create better income opportunities for our research at CIMMYT has moved from a plot to a landscape approach, a systems approach. We consider the three principles of CA, minimum tillage, soil cover and diversification, the base for the construction of an efficient and resilient production system. But know that we need to go beyond those and include precision, data-driven, geospatial and digital agronomy, plus inputs as well from foresight and targeting and business models for scaling to generate real transformation of the agri-food system per se. The key for me is that we use science and evidence-based approaches in improving agricultural systems towards resilient livelihoods. I would like to share a couple of examples from our work, just to make it concrete today. The scientists will have more of those discussions later on, but scale. We work in several regions in the world with hundreds of thousands of farmers. And link them back to why CA is an excellent opportunity to address present and future challenges in agriculture. The first example of a benefit, CA methods can help to increase resilience to climate change. We heard already several speakers talk about it. For example, for maize, drought stress and extreme temperatures work together to reduce yields. I'm really worried about it in the future, especially in Africa and South Asia. So drought reduces the crop's ability to cope with that excessive heat, and according to projections, this will only get worse. So I would like to share an example of our work in Africa. Over 14 seasons and across 10 communities in Malawi, we tested if changes in crop management based on CA can make cropping systems more adaptive to climate stress. Results show that by using stress-tolerant maize varieties embedded in conservation agriculture that uses legume rotations, some of the negative yield effects of heat and drought stress were reduced. The same thing is happening in Latin America. So as several people said, it's more packages of innovations. Mexico is currently going through one of the world's worst droughts in decades, and something that is projected to become more frequent due to climate change. In the summer of 2020, in our headquarters close to Mexico City, we experienced only 2/3 of the usual rainfall. In those conditions, CA yielded twice as much grain of maize than the conventional practice, including tillage, monoculture, and residue removal. 5.6 tons per hectare versus 2.2 tons per hectare. For wheat, the difference was even bigger, with wheat yields 4 times bigger in conservation agriculture than in conventional practice. A second benefit of conservation agriculture methods can help to protect biodiversity. Let me tell you about our work on fighting the fall armyworm, a major pest that came in the last 2 years in Africa and other continents right now. So it's an insect pest native to the Americas, and several years ago it began its march across the globe, eating everything in sight, and unfortunately maize, like for people, was one of its favorite foods. CIMMYT and partners, many partners, have studied ways to battle fall armyworm, and in 2020 we released a CIMMYT 3 fall armyworm tolerant elite maize hybrids for Eastern and Southern Africa. So currently the varieties are undergoing the process of national performance trials across 14 countries in Africa, and the plan is to distribute the seeds to farmers in 2021 and in the coming years. But seeds alone won't increase farmers' yields. You also need good agronomic practices, such as the integration of legumes in climate-adapted push-pull systems, which make CA systems a strong ecological response and solution against fall armyworm that is accessible to farmers. In Zimbabwe, where we are located as well, we integrated seeds with CA and the best diversification strategies adapted to the environment. Doing this, we experienced significant reductions in fall armyworm due to ecological control by ants and other predators. Again, this type of system is important because farmers often cannot afford to buy or access crop protection chemicals. And plus, they may pose risks to the environment and the farmers themselves. In Mexico, where fall armyworm is native, we are integrating agroecological pest management into our work with farmers to address fall armyworm, in collaboration with our national counterpart in IFAD. Farmers commonly apply large quantities of highly toxic insecticides to control this pest, causing environmental and health problems. Fall armyworm sex pheromones were first used to monitor populations to understand insecticide application needs and now used for massive capture and mating disruption. Through capacity building with farmers and extension agents, we succeeded in drastically reducing the application of broad-spectrum or highly toxic insecticides from 90% of registered applications in 2012, registered in fields in CIMMYT projects, to 40% in 2019. A third benefit: CA methods sustainably use natural resources and improve incomes. So it reduces soil erosion, improves water retention and nutrient availability for crops, and gradually increases soil organic matter accumulation, important for climate change. While these are fantastic biophysical benefits, what convinces farmers to integrate CA in their fields is the fact that it reduces the cost of production and ultimately raises their incomes. For many years, CIMMYT has worked with partners to transform the African landscape from manual to mechanized. Crucial for smallholder farmers. It's super important for transforming smallholder farming systems through small-scale mechanization tools like two-wheel tractors. And just recently, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Ag in Zimbabwe initiated a new strategic alliance with CIMMYT and the private sector to scale out to mechanized conservation agriculture to 1 million of smallholder farmers by 2025. This will not only help to reduce drudgery of farming, but also create new business opportunities for women and youth, and we have seen examples in Asia. Let's look at an example in Asia. The rice-wheat rotation of the Indo-Gangetic Plains is South Asia's food bowl, but it's becoming unsustainable. If status quo persists, the region will face complex agricultural sustainability and implications on health due to air pollution of the rice straw burning, water and agrochemical uses. Now, integrating CA with adapted varieties has shown tremendous potential for resource conservation, adaptation to climate risks, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and increasing yield and farmers' income across the Indo-Gangetic Plains. So we have substantial evidence building with government and non-government partners in West Bengal. Has been seen integration of various CA implements become compulsory in any government-supported custom hire center, which is seeing substantial leaps in uptake across the state, including direct seeding of the wheat in the rice stubble. In India, by using a tractor attachment called the happy seeder instead of conventional tillage tools, farmers are making 20% more profit while applying less fertilizer, less water, with significant reduction in greenhouse gases. So this happy seeder, designed in Australia, cuts and lifts straw, sows wheat into the soil and deposits the straw over the sown areas as much as mulch with little disturbance to the underlying soil. This eliminates the need to burn straw, reduce this, removing the main source for air pollution in parts of India where air quality sometimes is 20 times higher than the safe threshold defined by the WHO. In addition, it can save over $130 per hectare in farmers' expenses, lessen irrigation needs by as much as 25%, and allow early planting of wheat to avoid yield-reducing stress at the end of the wheat crop season. Up to 50 degrees Celsius, wheat is not growing anymore. So given the depletion of aquifers and labor shortages, the development of direct seeding technologies is leading to increased investments and adoption of direct seeded rice. This is a win for the farmers and for the environment. So recent work has also highlighted how CA is linked with improved gendered outcomes and livelihoods in South Asia, with females often benefiting more in terms of saving than their male counterparts. Early findings also suggest that they are able to apply that time not only to household responsibilities, but also
I think we may have
educational incomes for their children. In conclusion, challenges still remain for the widespread adoption of new methods and techniques to make farming systems more sustainable. But because of this, it's not a choice. We must increase food production, and we cannot allow agriculture to continue to destroy the environment and the natural resources we depend on. So the development and use of agroecological approaches, I call on biological evidence, is not only smart investment for people and nature, it's imperative for sustainably feeding the anticipated global population of 9.1 billion by 2050. But there's much we still need to know. Considerable knowledge gaps that need investment, collective efforts and joint research, and the CGIAR is ready for this. The CGIAR, there's 12 centers that are part of it right now, together with all its partners, other international organizations, global agricultural organizations, but also especially the national systems. And last but not least, the farmers. We need more projects to work directly with farmers at scale and then combine those technologies. And for me, mechanization is one of the most important ones to make conservation agriculture possible. So I hope that together we can work on finding answers and filling knowledge gaps and scaling of technologies that are based on scientific evidence together with our stakeholders, in the first place, the farmers. So thank you for your attention, and I wish you a successful 8th World Congress on Conservation Agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Kropff. So now to close out our welcoming addresses, we have a video from Mary Boote, who is Chief Executive Officer of the Global Farmer Network.
Good morning. I bring greetings to you from the Global Farmer Network, who I serve as CEO, currently comprised of 207 farmers hailing from 60 countries and 6 continents. The farmers who are the GFN are committed to a mission of amplifying the farmer's voice in promoting trade, technology, sustainable farming, economic growth, food security. I would have enjoyed being with you in person. In the past 16 months, we have all experienced unexpected challenges, regardless of where we live, including a need to adapt and learn how to communicate with each other differently. For an audience focused on using technology and strategies for the benefit of society and the environment, the ability to use technology to speak with you today is humbling, and another example of how it can be used to share knowledge, support, encourage, and connect. Thank you to the delegation leadership for allowing me to connect with you in this manner. Your theme, the future of farming, profitable and sustainable farming with conservation agriculture, lays out very succinctly the challenge, and the opportunity for us. We know that profitable and sustainable are reachable goals that can be achieved in tandem. The data to support that truth is available. The challenge before all of us is to make that case, share the information, support agriculturalists globally, and work together. Collaboration is an imperative. As I look at today's agenda, I see an important session that's highlighting the farmer's role, followed by another session on private sector innovation and engagement, to one that discusses the role of public institutions, followed by a session that is focused on civil society contributions, all very important in their own right. To drive action, collaboration between all is absolutely necessary. Today, discussions regarding what a resilient global food system looks like and how it should operate are being held on global and regional platforms, from the UN and the Food Systems Summit to the EU Commission, and discussions around the Green Deal, to the United States, where President Biden, focused on climate change, actually endorsed cover crops in his State of the Union address this past February, to Africa, India, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, where the challenges of climate, pest, disease, and policies are the focus of governments, NGOs, public and civil society. We have the opportunity, the responsibility to speak up, reframe, and foster constructive global dialogue. One of the silver linings uncovered by the global pandemic was this determination by every country in the world that agriculture is an essential industry. In addition to allowing the continuation of agriculture production without pause, it has provided farmers a unique window of opportunity to talk about what they are doing and why, explaining that a farmer's basic duty is to protect the soil, not because the government requires it or tells them to, but because the economic, environmental, and social sustainability of their farm demands it. Farmers are leading the way in food production, protection of the soil, preservation of biodiversity, and meeting the global challenge of climate change. Their experience and practical expertise are needed to bring a sense of reality to policies discussed and created a long way from the field in an ever-increasing virtual world. People who are not engaged in farming often lose sight of this important fact. We in this room know that farmers are innovators who are applying technologies to the challenges of this moment in time. Conservation agriculture is a tool that supports and is foundational to our joint efforts to build and maintain a science-based, resilient, sustainable global food system. Unfortunately, the true results of conservation agriculture are invisible to many. You have to dig down, literally, to see evidence that conservation agriculture, combined with other technologies and practices, is improving soil health, nutrient cycling, water efficiency, storing carbon. And as one of the GFN farmers from Iowa stated recently, I'm growing more livestock under the soil than on top of it these days. For many, this has required new thinking and conscientious planning. And as farmers, researchers, policy leaders, and more in this conservation agriculture space, you have a positive story to tell about the role that you are playing together. Global meetings like this Congress serve an important purpose, bringing together all the stakeholders in conservation agriculture sphere to share information, exchange ideas, develop new concepts, encourage, support, become re-engaged, and for many to us, re-inspired to do more. One of our Argentinian farmers and an APRA-SEED member shared a concept with me that I think bears repeating for this important audience. Nobody knows more than we all know together. The positive impact driven by conservation agriculture is exponentially increased when that knowledge is exported. Farming is different everywhere, but many of you have observed or benefited directly from putting to use information others have shared, adapting it to fit your local conditions. In a world with a growing population and rising environmental pressures, sharing the strategy, techniques, and technology of conservation agriculture to areas of the world under additional stress, like Africa and India, have never been more important. The winning results, but also the mistakes made, lessons learned, so they don't have to be made again. The exchange of information and experiences makes everyone better, and our world is enriched. In January 2021, entrepreneur Elon Musk, the visionary talent behind Tesla, tweeted that his foundation would give $100 million for a breakthrough in carbon capture technology. On Earth Day 2021, the details for Musk's Carbon X Prize were released, offering an award for the creation of a technology that would annually remove 10 gigatons of carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the ground by 2050. Climate change and the challenges it is presenting around the world concerns Mr. Musk. It concerns all of us. As participants in this World Congress for Conservation Agriculture, we know that in addition to building soil health, retaining moisture and nutrients, boosting yield, and ultimately increasing a farm's resilience, the impact of conservation agriculture is turning fields into factories of carbon sequestration. A single farm using conservation agriculture cannot solve the challenge of climate change. But imagine what is possible if all of the farms of the world were to work together. Farmers' everyday actions are uniquely important, and as a collaborative force, they are a force for good. When you see and share with the world that part of the solution to our building and maintaining a sustainable, resilient global food system while dealing with the challenge of climate change is below our feet, the power of conservation agriculture can be a game changer. I appreciate the opportunity to address you this morning and look forward to joining you in person soon. I wish you a successful and impactful Congress focused on sharing information with each other, learning, encouraging, supporting, and laying out a future of farming that is truly profitable and sustainable for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Indeed, we all hope that we get to a future soon where we can meet in person again. Well, that does it for the welcoming addresses. I would next like to introduce our inaugural speech on the benefits of CA for farmers, society, and the environment. I turn over the floor to Amir Kassam, a moderator with the Global CA Community of Practice. He is also chairman of the International Conservation Agriculture Advisory Panel for Africa and a visiting professor at the School of Agriculture, Policy and Development at the University of Reading in the UK. Mr. Kassam?
Thank you, Dave. I hope I'm being heard properly. Friends, this is an historic day for the CA movement. It was 20 years ago that ECAF, the European Conservation Agriculture Federation, organized the first World Congress on Conservation Agriculture in partnership with FAO. Today, thanks to continued support from FAO and ECAF, as well as other sponsors, and especially Swiss No-Till, we are gathered here in Bern and all around the world to celebrate our success as the drivers of the biggest farming revolution to have occurred in our lifetimes. Let us celebrate our joint engagement and contribution to transforming farming from being the main source of land degradation globally to becoming a driving force for conserving and rebuilding the quality of soils and agroecosystems so that they can sustainably meet the world's future needs for food and other farm products while helping to slow the pace of climate change and ecological breakdown. Let us celebrate our part in the transformation of farming from being a contributor to the many interconnected crises facing the world to being a key part of the overall solution. It is no exaggeration to claim that our achievement in engaging millions of farmers across every continent in what has become known as conservation agriculture, or CA, has been a massive game changer. We can and should take great pride in all we have done, but we still face huge challenges to complete our revolution. So what we have pioneered is steadily improved and becomes the global norm in farming. Our task during these 3 days online and in the field days is to shape the future directions in which we need to move together to achieve this in the shortest possible time. For this, we must apply lessons from our collective experience over the past 50 years or so. We have come this far because of the foresights and determination of some remarkable visionaries and pioneers, mostly farmers in the USA, South America, Asia, Africa, Europe, and Australia. These pioneers saw that conventional tillage involving frequent inversion of the topsoil was damaging the structure of the soils, reducing their organic matter content and making them susceptible to erosion by wind and water. They showed us that they could grow productive crops without digging or plowing, and they devoted their lives to improving CA technologies and sharing them with others in their own countries and beyond. Rather than list these pioneers by name, I invite each of you to think back to the beginnings of CA in your own country and to reflect on the exceptional people who challenged conventional wisdom and put their plows aside. One of the most notable of the early CA pioneers in the tropics was Dr. Herbert Bartz, who sadly died recently. In 1972, with encouragement from Rolf Derpsch from GTZ, he became the first Brazilian farmer to throw away his plow. From then on, he devoted his life to improving CA techniques and promoting CA in Brazil and globally. Now, Brazil has become a leading CA nation with 43 million hectares, or nearly 80% of its annual cropland, under various forms of no-till agriculture. Herbert was hoping to be with us today and had prepared a brief video message to inspire us to follow in his footsteps. I am delighted that his daughter Marie has joined us in this Congress, and she will have more to say about her father this evening at the social event where she will be showing the video. I invite you to watch another video now, which Herbert made not long ago for a CA Congress in Africa. Can we see the video, please?
Hello, my friends, participants of the second African Congress of Conservation Agriculture. It's a big pleasure for me to bring to you a certain message of hope and future, because we lived in Brazil, what you are living actually here. Brazil, 50 years ago, was an importer of wheat, of butter, of meat, of beans, all what you need to live, and almost by a miracle, by a wonder, we did it. Actually, Brazil is exporting all these products all over the world. And it happened while we discovered our conditions are so similar to yours. We have the same soil, we have the same climate, the same conditions, almost the same people. Why you shouldn't be able to copy, to realize what Brazil did so well, succeeded all over the years. And I'm very happy to tell it to you for the one reason, because the very beginning was hard and full of difficulties. We had to invent, we had to build equipment, machinery to resolve the big problems that dominate the tropical agriculture. So, in our best conditions here in Brazil, no-tilling was the unique solution, because the difficult resources of water and soil cannot be put in doubt by conventional agricultural practices. So there is no option. You have to go to no-till.
Let me now briefly touch on our achievements. When the pioneers of no-till said that good crops could be grown without digging and plowing, most farmers laughed in disbelief and dismissed them as dreamers. Now, just half a century later, millions of farmers all over the world have taken them seriously. They have embarked voluntarily on all kinds of CA systems, no longer carrying out any tillage on their farms. The global area farmed using CA systems has risen from less than 1 million hectares in 8 countries in 1970 to 205 million hectares in 102 countries in 2019. This is 15% of the world's cropland area. In Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, Paraguay, South Africa, Uruguay, and the USA, CA methods are applied on more than half their cropped areas. From 1990 to 2009, the CA area globally increased at an average annual rate of 5.2 million hectares, reaching about 100 million hectares in 2008. From then on until now, the CA area expanded at double that rate, attaining an average of 10.5 million hectares per year. This was largely because the global CA community of practice, the CIMMYT, was established in 2008 with its own communication and networking platform and began to globalize CA through the farmer-led CA movements worldwide. The CIMMYT, of which I am moderator, is a fast-growing, open-ended community in which any person or institutions interested in CA is welcome. While its network and mailing list extend its reach, it has no list of members, no membership fees, no hierarchical structure, and no officers with executive powers. It is glued together by its adherents' commitment to farming without soil tillage, their natural inclination to innovate, and their enthusiasm to share their experiences. This has led to the transformation of local CA groups, which in turn are linked, formation of many local CA groups, which in turn are linked to regional groups in regular contact with the moderator. With the valuable patronage of FAO and much goodwill and support from other international entities, the global CIMMYT has come to play an important catalytic and facilitating role, including the promotion of regional programs and national activities, sharing experiences, making information, especially on innovations, widely accessible, and engaging donors and financing agencies in funding local CA programs. All of this has been done with the intent that farmers remain in the driving seat. The triennial congresses provide the opportunity for all interested parties to take stock of progress, to share experiences and ideas, and to chart the future directions in which the community will seek to move. This has clearly succeeded. CA is now practiced in all major climate zones in which there is farmed land, from the warm, humid tropics to the cool, temperate areas. And it is applied in all the world's main farming systems. It has taken hold in rain-fed and irrigated areas, short-term and perennial crops, mixed crop animal farms, and organic systems. It has been adopted by large-scale mechanized farms and by smaller farms where most of the work is manual. CA has also evolved into a wide range of complex farming systems, which make the most of the improved soil conditions created by the absence of tillage. But in spite of all this, our movement remains vulnerable to possible changes in the governance of our global food system. A surprising threat could come from transnational corporations convened by the World Economic Forum in Davos, which have declared a fourth industrial revolution. This would be based on harnessing big data to tell every farmer what to grow and when to plant, and to manipulate consumer food choices. While they claim that this will cure the ills of the global food governance system, I feel bound to ask, will this address degradation of our common resources and the planet? Will this meet the needs of small-scale farmers and protect their seed, land, and food sovereignty? Will this change our food distribution system to a more equitable one that would eliminate global hunger and lead us all to healthier diets? In raising these questions, I'm not denying that there are many valuable opportunities for widening the use of digital tools to empower farmers and consumers to make better choices, but without infringing on their rights to make their own decisions. The reality is that we are the great farming revolutionaries of our time for large and small-scale farmers. Together, by translating our knowledge and convictions into practical action on the ground, we are leading the most transformational revolution in how land is farmed since the inversion plow was invented in the mid-17th century. We have successfully challenged the universally held assumption that most land has to be regularly and intensively tilled and chemicalized to be productive and profitable. We are also proving that the widely held view that smallholders have no future is nonsense. We do this because we believe in it, based on the evidence generated by the early no-till farmers and science. Nobody has told us or ordered us to stop plowing and digging, and nobody has had to pay us to change our ways. Farmers are the initiators and drivers of the CA movement, its main innovators and its main promoters. Their success, including spreading and adapting CA into new ecologies and farming systems, has led to the growing involvement of scientists and created a demand for specialized equipment and inputs that has expanded the participation of the private sector in our revolution. The main motivation of farmers' engagement has been CA's potential for net gains in productivity and incomes. By eliminating tillage, large farmers have cut spending on farm machinery, inputs and fuel, while small-scale farmers have not only made big savings in time and human energy from excluding deep hand digging, but they have also found that they can move into CA with few purchase inputs and rely on their own seeds. Formal research systems have become increasingly engaged in comparing the impacts of different CA interventions, especially on soil structure and biology, moisture retention, carbon sequestration, and pesticide-free weed and pest management. There is now a huge raft of easily accessible scientific studies on almost every dimension of CA applications, thanks to the expanding databases of CA networks, FAO, and Cornell University. Information is easily accessible on almost every dimension of CA in textbooks and in scientific and technical studies. In future, however, must do much more to team up in generating new systems knowledge. One feature of CA is that its adoption and spread does not follow traditional linear agricultural extension models that supposedly transfer the findings of the researchers to farmers. Instead, farmers themselves play a major role in innovation through CA Farmers Association, farmer field schools, clubs, farmer networks, as well as through farming community engagement. These social institutions offer opportunities for sharing knowledge and for cultivating solidarity that stimulate change and self-empowerment. This works effectively for all farmers when their skills and knowledge and needs for seed, land, and food sovereignty are respected and supported by governments and stakeholders in the public and private sector. True, the private sector has responded well to demand, especially for machinery and inputs, but in many places, CA farmers call the shots, and the private sector has to offer a mutually beneficial service support along the value chain. We are pushing ahead with CA and improving it as we go, mainly because we have found our incomes rising and the quality of our farmland improving. CA differs from the dominant industrial approaches to tillage farming that have been driven by the goal of ever greater input intensification aimed at maximizing yields. They use more and more inputs and need even bigger investments. Over time, they all too often damage or destroy the soils and environment that provide the foundations for food production and environmental or ecosystem services, and also put human health at risk of nutritional disorder. In spite of CA's rapid spread, tillage-based agriculture intensification continues to cause vast physical and biological soil degradation and erosion, forcing the abandonment of once productive agricultural lands, increasing the frequency of flood damage, polluting our environment with toxic chemicals, releasing high levels of greenhouse gases, wiping out biodiversity, and reducing adaptability and resilience to biotic and abiotic stresses, as well as fostering resistance to antibiotics. It seems to come naturally nowadays for humans, at least in so-called developed countries, to think that more is better. We now realize that satisfying the desire for more and more material things without considering their environmental impact is putting at risk the future of our children and grandchildren and of all those with whom we share the planet. CA's success comes from deliberately moving exactly in the opposite direction. We are getting more from less and bequeathing a healthier planet to future generations. We have already shown the ability of CA's core practices of no-till, soil mulching, and crop diversification to provide an effective ecological foundation for integrated biological pest management and for drastically reducing agrochemical use. We have also shown in several environments with smallholders and large-scale farmers the avoidance of the use of pesticides for controlling weeds, insects, and pathogens through, for example, with push-pull strategies, techniques for planting green involving green manure cover crops and crimpers, and manipulation of soil fungi to bacteria ratio for weed control. And many smallholder farmers are practicing CA without the use of any agrochemicals. This is why FAO placed CA at the core of their Save and Grow global strategy for sustainable production intensification. So CA is good for all farmers, good for the land, good for the planet, and good for people. Let us now look to the future of CA. There is no doubt that CA is a success story that is here to stay, and that it will continue to grow fast. But what about our expectations for the outcomes of this Congress? The organizers of the Congress are convinced that CA must be the mainstay of the shift that the world has to make urgently towards sustainable farming and food systems. This is because we know that for as long as most soils continue to be damaged by tillage, the world cannot reach the goal of making food systems sustainable. But we also recognize that some aspects of CA, as it is now generally practiced, are restricting its sustainability. Especially some no-till systems with poor cropping diversity still remain too dependent on pesticides, especially herbicides, on mineral nitrogen fertilizer, and on unduly heavy farm machinery driven by fossil fuels. I'm sure that you will all agree that this has to change. Within our global community, there are many precedents to move for moves in the right directions, but we need to throw our weight behind accelerating their enhancement and uptake so that CA becomes synonymous with sustainable and profitable farming for the future. We also know that we cannot go it alone. We must engage globally and locally with the champions of other essential elements of sustainable farming, especially those engaged in organic farming, integrated pest management, agroecology, and regenerative farming systems in their various guises. In return, all these farming systems can be helped to harness the ecological CA principles and practices. If we do not share our experiences, help each other and pull together, many of the international sustainable development goals, the SDGs, relating to food, natural resources management, and climate change will be unattainable. We also have an important role to play in the recently launched UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, 2021 to 2030. I also suggest for your consideration that the time may have come for our community to begin to help to shape food consumption patterns in ways that will relieve pressure on the world's finite area of cultivable land, rather than destroy forests and other vulnerable ecologies to expand farmland with doubly negative effect on the rate of climate change. Fortunately, we are faced with a win-win-win opportunity, as the area under farming can be greatly reduced, environmental damage curbed, and human health improved by inducing a shift towards predominantly plant-based diets. This in turn would cut demand for livestock feeds, which has been a main driver of the recent damaging expansion in cropped areas, especially in tropical regions. It is against this background that I suggest that this Congress may wish to signal its support for a notional goal of having enhanced CA-based systems, what we might term CA Extra, fully applied on at least 50% of the world's annual cropland area, or 700 million hectares by 2050. I believe this is an attainable goal, given that the global CA movement doubled the rate of uptake of CA during the last decade. The big challenge will be to graft the other essential elements of sustainable farming into all our programs, including those in the existing 200 million hectares already applying CA. Achieving this goal would require a massive boost to the momentum of our community's activities, with a concentration on the following 6 themes. Theme 1, greatly speeding up the invention and mainstreaming of a growing array of truly sustainable CA technologies. Theme 2, catalyzing the formation of additional farmer-run CA groups in countries and regions in which they do not yet exist, and enabling all groups to accelerate CA Extra adoption. Theme 3, embedding the CA community in the main global effort to shift to sustainable food management systems and replicating the arrangements at the local levels. Theme 4, assuring that CA farmers are justly rewarded for their generation of public goods and environmental services. Theme 5, mobilizing recognition, institutional support, and additional funding from governments and international development institutions to support CA Extra program expansion. Theme 6, building global public awareness of the steps being taken by our CA community to make food production and consumption sustainable. To move forward with this, strengthening of the moderator's capacity within the CA community is now needed. Much thought must still be given to this, but one thing is clear: we must retain the concept that, as now, our future actions must be guided mainly by a growing team of volunteers coming from within our midst, who are committed to giving their expertise, knowledge, time, and energy to enhancing and spreading CA systems. Earlier, I paid tribute to our pioneers and champions, with millions of farmers now applying CA in its many variants across the world. I feel confident that plenty of people will signal their willingness to dedicate themselves to moving our activities forward. One of the few positive byproducts of the COVID pandemic is that it has stimulated great advances in information and communications technology. We are applying some of these in this largely virtual Congress. Any new actions need to take the fullest possible advantage of these innovations. One important implication is that all those involved in any new program moderation arrangements can make most of their inputs from where they live. Of equal significance is the huge opportunity that these technologies offer for accelerating the spread of advances in knowledge across our community and beyond. The community's strength has been built on farmer-to-farmer sharing of experience, usually within their own localities and sometimes through country exchange visits. Now, these farmers-to-farmer exchanges can instantaneously become global. And so, we shall nurture the emergence of a stronger moderating mechanism that will function almost entirely virtually. It would enjoy the guidance of an advisory panel representing regional and national interests and those of cooperating institutions. It would have the capacity and power to set up task forces to push forward on each of the 6 main themes and any more that might be added. And it would need to have a permanent IT systems development and operating capacity. It would also oversee and support future processes for convening CA World Congresses. Finally, it would have to be set up as an entity, perhaps as a non-profit mechanism with sound financial management and program monitoring and reporting capacities. Finally, though this may seem a minor issue, I also propose that we convene a small working group to set up arrangements for honoring our pioneers through creating a CA Hall of Fame in time for the 9th World Congress. To get started immediately on this expanded agenda, ECAF has generously agreed that elements of the Congress Secretariat can continue to assist the moderator in moving ahead with these new arrangements. I hope that we can also continue to benefit from the patronage offered by FAO since our work began. I am confident that this Congress will, like earlier ones, give a real great boost to our efforts and set the stage for a very bright future. A future in which our community will play a hugely important part in the race to make the world's food systems properly sustainable. Thank you all for joining us at this challenging moment in our history. My very best wishes to you all for a truly inspiring Congress.
Thanks very much, Mr. Kassam. I think you've done a good job in inspiring us, actually, for the rest of the day. We've had a ton of interest, actually, in this morning's speeches. We have over 400 participants from 50 different countries across the world. So I think that shows the big interest in conservation agriculture that's out there, and also just how international this is. It's not limited to just one geography, and we're definitely going to hear more about that in the course of the rest of the day. So we're going to take a short coffee break now, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to farmers from all over the world, from China, from France, from Ghana, and from Argentina. So that really gives us a cross-section of how CA is applicable in many different geographies throughout the world, but also we'll be hearing about how those different geographical factors and also those different political factors can make a big difference. We'll also be hearing from the private sector, from companies who are going to tell us more about how they've been working with CA so far and some of their plans for the future. And what I think will really be key is we're going to hear from the public sector, from public institutions and governments about how they are, or perhaps are not, designing a policy framework that's going to help people to put into place these CA solutions. We'll also be hearing from civil society about how CA can interact with larger goals about food safety, food security, climate change, all the things that civil society is working on, how CA can work with them in achieving those goals. So we'll take a short coffee break now. Be sure to be back here at 11:45 for the start of the farmers panel. So I wish you a good coffee break and hope you can make yourself some great coffee.